Good morning. Welcome to We Are Resilient, 5 resilience strategies for building a stronger team. I'm so happy to have you with me this morning. I love talking about this. And I'd like to make it interactive. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, raise your hand, and or just put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we can have a nice conversation together. Thank you. First, I just want to appreciate you. I want to thank you for being you, for handling all the challenges that come up, for taking care of the people around you, for caring. I know you work hard to keep those in your life in a good place, and I know it can be really difficult. As we start, let's just start with what challenges do we face with our teams? Feel free to add yours to the chat. Often we have team members who micromanage. Maybe they belittle or undermine people. Sometimes they just don't get their work done. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they don't know how to do it. Maybe they don't have the skills. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Sometimes they just spread a lot of negativity. Maybe it's drama, maybe it's other negative things. Sometimes they actually ignore other people on their team and just focus on themselves. Either way, it can create conditions in which it's difficult to get work done. Really, they're creating conditions that block collaboration. Here at Dovetail Learning, we're going to talk about that today. Our mission is to strengthen resilience in adults, youth, and children. And our vision is creating a world of kind and connected human beings. So I want to start off and say all of our materials are an open educational resource, which means you can download them for free, adapt them for use in your community, as long as you give attribution, collaborate, and share back anything you create, and share alike, so use the same license with any materials you create with our materials. And as for me, I have 2 adult children. I'm a white cisgendered woman who's married, and one of my daughter's engaged, so I'm excited about that. And I've lived and worked all over the world. I currently also care for my mother who has Alzheimer's, and I love kitties. And my role in life, I think, is to help others, to empower others to live their best life. And so that's why I love doing things like sharing this material with you today. So what's our agenda today? It's really on how does resilience help build us a stronger team? We're going to give you a little information on the We Are Resilient approach. We're going to look at what can get in the way of resilience, our protective patterns and lack of psychological safety, because those can really impact our team. They're the biggest drivers. And then what resilience skills can help us: appreciating others, seeking and honoring agreements. I will tell you today is just a quick high flyby of the We Are Resilient approach. There's so much more material all available on our website. We have a lot of resources. If you look in the free stuff, we have programs you can join. You can get coach certification, all sorts of things. So I advise you to look at all of our other resources. We Are Resilient is about practical skills for managing stress, strengthening relationships, and communicating more effectively. All of these things have a huge impact on your team. Before we get any further, let's unpack this word resilience. It can be kind of a tricky word, like what in the world does it mean and how does it impact my team? Resilience is simple. It's the ability to adapt and respond to meet challenges effectively. We know that we can be going along and we can feel really resilient. Something can happen. Maybe one of our team members says something and we feel, we're so triggered by it. So our resilience will be higher or lower in different situations, and that's not going to change. But what can be changed is our resilience can be strengthened through the practice of our skills. So even though we're always going to have these ups and downs, we can make them less, okay? Also, we know that resilience is an ordinary superpower. It does not come from any rare and special qualities, but from the everyday magic of just being human. That's the We Are Resilient approach, just in a really quick nutshell. And we just have that fun video because I want to show you it's like unpacking a present. There's so many different parts. Today, we're just going to be looking at a few. The resilient approach has a conceptual framework that can be really helpful in your head to think about resilience and how it can help you. It really integrates into your lived experience and hopefully will transform your heart over time. But it's all about concrete tips, easy, simple things, not easy, simple things for you to do that can make a huge difference over time. We talk about 5 types of resilience: the reactive resilience, personal, relational, group, and cultural resilience. And we talk about all of those things because all of those things impact us and we can create a stronger team. Today, we're only having time for 2 and 30 minutes. So we're going to do a quick information about our protective patterns and how they give us reactive resilience, and just a few of our collaborating skills that strengthen our group resilience. Again, if you want more, look at our website. So how do we teach this We Are Resilient approach? We think one concept that's very important is to be a change agent for yourself and others requires practicing it ourselves so we become better. This is not something you just give to your team and you tell your team to do, but this is something that we have to do ourselves. And that means micro practices are key. We're not talking about big major changes you have to upend your life, but little things you put in your life that will make a big difference. Then we can model it and others can learn from us. Our team members can learn how to do this from us by just what we do every day. We can mentor them using curiosity, compassionate questions, and encouragement. And that's how you create a good, strong team. Really creating great teams is about relationships. We are hardwired for connection, as Brene Brown reminds us. We are strengthened by being present to each other's stories with transparency and vulnerability. We normalize and humanize each other by being ourselves with each other. We're companions on the journey. That can all feel really big for some of us in some of our teams where none of that stuff is happening. So let's spend a minute to thinking about what can get in the way of our resilience. This is our stress trigger reaction. So we're going along, everything is okay, I'm getting my work done, and then I get that email from Susie. It's a stress event, I have a reaction. Oh, my protective patterns are triggered, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, maybe I want to do all these things, I have this peak. It can take a really long time to calm down. We feel depleted afterwards. That does not help us do the best work we want in the world. If we want to manage the stress curve, we're going along, something happens, maybe we get a call from Johnny, we notice our protective patterns, oh, I'm starting to get triggered, but we wonder and assess, is that helpful? I don't think that's really the best result. I don't think I'm going to get the best thing out of myself or my team. So we choose a resilience skill instead, and that helps us calm down and we stay centered. So what are these protective patterns that can get us all into a dither? They give us our reactive resilience, right? They're all about how we react to the world. And they can be helpful and they cannot be helpful depending on the situation. We have talked about 6 protective patterns, and all of these protective patterns we do at different times, but a lot of us do 1 or 2 of them more than others. So distrusting, hypervigilance, hyper caretaking, avoiding, defending, and attacking. Now, what's your style? We all have certain styles. For me, I tend to avoid or attack. So if something comes in that I don't really want to deal with, oh, it's that email from that person who never gets things right. Sometimes I just put it in the bottom and I pretend I don't see that email for a while. Or attacking. Somebody comes in and they like, oh, this is, you haven't done this right. And I'm like, you haven't done it right either. And I'll just go right in with my words and, I move into attacking. Sometimes that's helpful if I'm standing up for myself, but sometimes it's not. So all of these things, distrusting is, do I doubt myself or others? So I'm working on a project. Oh, I don't think I can get it right. I don't have the skills. I don't know how to do it, right? This is something I've never done before. We can move into distrusting. Or that person's never going to get that done. Even if I sent that email, they'll never get it done because they never do. Hypervigilant. Am I in constant high alert? What's going to happen? We have this big project. Who's going to mess it up? Who's going to do wrong in the presentation? That's hypervigilance, right? Hypervigilance can help us, like distrusting, like the other ones. If maybe it's an important thing that we really need to be on and everyone needs to be on their high game. But we know it can also hurt us because we can be exhausted. If we're hypervigilant all the time and never trusting other people, it can be really exhausting. That's just like our other protective patterns. It's, do I over prioritize others? Do I feel like a victim? Maybe it's like, oh, we have to get all this work done. I know they're too busy at night. They have kids and families. I better stay up late and get it all done, right? Then we feel like a victim at the end. And maybe they actually had time and planned on doing it, and we didn't even ask them. We just jumped in and did it. Avoiding. Do I withdraw or retreat? Maybe numb my emotions, block those emails, not see them, avoid the conversation because I don't want to have a conversation with Susie. So I make sure I don't eat lunch today with her, or other kinds of things. Defending. Do I act like others are constantly judging and criticizing me? Somebody brings up the project. No, I didn't do that. It wasn't me. Attacking. Am I quick to be on the offensive? Well, if you say that mine work's not done, your work's never done on time either, right? All of these things we can move into. I know you can feel already how they can be harmful. Sometimes they can be helpful. If we're attacking, maybe people need to see that we have strength, or maybe we're defending because people continually to attack us. There's different reasons for us to do things. We're not asking you like not to do these things ever, but just to notice, is it being helpful? And think about, what protective patterns do you use most and how they impact you. Once you notice your protective patterns, often we notice other people's protective patterns. So creating a way that we can safely talk about protective patterns, which is what our material is about. We can have conversations, we can notice them ourselves and others and know they're normal. And for maybe all of us can do a better job of noticing them. The human condition, every human being has impeccable reasons for being exactly who they are. Tip number 1 is notice your protective patterns. Are they helping or hurting? We have a lot more material on how to do that on our website. The second thing I want to talk about is psychological safety. Since our protective patterns emerge when we feel unsafe, it's really good to kind of unpack what feeling unsafe psychologically can feel like in a team, because it's really important. Our protective patterns emerge maybe when we feel like there's some psychological danger, when we maybe feel like we're going to, if we're going to make a mistake, if we have to admit that mistake, we might be in danger. Maybe we blame others. We're less likely to share different views. All of these things can happen when we're in a team that we feel is not safe for us, when we're not really there. If we feel like we're in a team where we are safe, we can admit, oh yes, I should have turned that in a different day, or I used the wrong numbers for that calculation, or I didn't mix that ingredient correctly. We also have to be comfortable learning from failure. Like, okay, I did that wrong. Next time I'll make sure and I double check the date before I send the email to 1,000 people. Everybody can openly share their ideas about what's happening. It just creates better innovation and decision-making. Resilience really is when you feel you can speak up, offer ideas, ask questions. We can question decisions or about to be decisions. We can just disagree, and we can influence others without fear of being corrected, embarrassed, shunned, or ignored. So I think the real question is for you and your team, is this how people feel? Do they feel psychological safety exists? And if they don't, then it's time to really look at, maybe it's your protective patterns that are influencing the team, maybe it's others, and you haven't created a team where psychological safety exists. Psychological safety is being able to give and receive feedback, raise issues and concerns, disagree, ask for clarification, offer solutions to problems, ask for help. All those things make resilient possible. And when you're doing that, that's when you're making a team that can really be most effective. So how do we create psychological team safety for our team? It requires you to make sure your own protective patterns are in check, and they're not emerging in ways that are harmful for your team members. We're really noticing and we're choosing resilient skills instead, and helping your team members do those things. The third thing I'd like to talk about is our collaborating skills. So our collaborating skills for group resilience, these are one of the 3 types of skills that we talk about in the We Are Resilient approach. And as I said, you can learn more about the other types on our website in our other programs. But these 3 skills we're going to talk about today are appreciating others, seeking agreements, and honoring agreements. And they're just examples of the kind of skills that can really make a difference for your team. So appreciating others, it's really just communicating what you appreciate. That's our tagline for that, for collaborating skill of appreciating others. Communicate what you appreciate. If we're curious about that, it's what do I appreciate about others' genius, qualities, or skills? What contributions do they bring to the group? I know for myself, I have worked in teams that have a huge diversity of skills, a huge diversity of qualities. And if I spend all my time being frustrated about how the other people aren't like me, we just butt heads and we never get to the kind of good work that we can do. But when I sit and think, oh, okay, that person doesn't think linearly like me, but that person has a lot of different types of ideas. When I can rest in that difference and say, okay, I'm going to appreciate that wild idea that person has, or I know that person doesn't think in terms that I do, but that person can bring a lot of joy to meetings by just making jokes and lighten things up. Wow, that can help me with the times when I'm challenged by that person. Or for another person on our team, I can say, okay, that person never comes in on time, and that is so frustrating for me. But I do know when they do come in, sometimes they bring treats. Isn't that nice for all of us? Or like, there's just an example for all of us, right? I know when I was raising my children, this was also really important. You know, my son was all over the place and a really busy boy and could really frustrate me sometimes. And I was like, oh, but look what energy he's bringing to the family. It's just an example. Anytime we back up and say, what do I appreciate about the other person? What contributions they bring? It just slows that judgment, slows that negativity that when we can feel toward other people, and moves us in a more positive space. So what are the micro practices around appreciating others? Can you find one thing to appreciate about the person you find challenging and share it with them? Not like, I know all these things bug me, but this one I like. Just focus on the one you like and try doing that regularly. In some ways, it's killing them with kindness, right? The kinder we can be, the more focused with appreciation, then it just smooths your relationship. You can notice how your appreciation impacts you, them, and your relationship. I find this is helpful with my husband. The more I can say, thank you for doing the dishes, or thank you for bringing me a nice cup of hot tea, or whatever it is that he's doing, the more I appreciate him and verbally tell him, the more the times that, oh, that didn't happen, or the, clothes got all wrinkly, or whatever it is that happened, then I can relax and say it's okay because I'm appreciating all the other good things. The one thing I do want to tell you too about all of this material is all of these skills have science that back them up. And if you pick up any of our books or download them free from our website, they all have pages on the science on the back. So feel free to, a back of each skill, free to download them for free or buy them from our website, and you can learn about the science for each one of these skills. Oops, hit my my tip number 3 is to build an expectation and regular opportunities for your team members to show appreciation to each other. That can be at the beginning of one meeting a week. You can get together and spend 5 minutes saying, people asking what appreciations. Then people will start bringing them, like thinking through the week and then bringing public appreciations. Or maybe it's just a way of people sending emails. Every time somebody does something that they want to appreciate, they say, send a thank you email. I know my boss is amazing with his thank you emails. And every time I see one, I'm like, wow, isn't that a nice thing to do? It can be just so helpful. And then when we're modeling it, our team members understand there is an expectation that we are an appreciative culture, and that's what we do in this team. Another important skill is seeking agreements. So it's thinking about making sure that we're on the same page, the same chapter, and the same book. So many times we're not, and we haven't even thought about it. So to think about, What are my assumed agreements that maybe aren't explicitly stated? And this can be a whole lot of things. We can be sitting in a meeting and waiting and waiting and waiting for that person who didn't show up, right? And maybe we've never explicitly stated, everyone should be in the room at 1 minute to 9 so we can start the meeting at 9. Or we can have assumed agreements. I know one of my assumed agreements is that we go into a meeting that people are not going to be looking at their phones. But have we ever explicitly stated that? There's so many things that we kind of think about the way people should behave that we've never talked about together. The other thing about agreements is these are not rules that somebody sets them on a high. This is my rule for the meeting. Have a meeting in which people talk together. What's important to you? What is the assumed agreement that you want to make explicit? And then we can share and agree together about what those should be. So many times, as I said, agreements are missing. So think about those and think about the explicit agreements that can help so we can work well together and achieve our purpose. That can be everything from maybe you have a work situation that you need agreements. Maybe it's a sports team that you're on and people are doing things that are, people are bugging people, and maybe just having a meeting about what agreements about how you're going to be together as a team, a sports team. It can be something like a book club group. It can be a family that's planning a party. Okay, let's have an agreement about who's actually going to get what done. And when we're disagree about choices, how are we going to resolve them? All sorts of things agreements can make a huge difference on. These are just an example of the kind of agreements that you can have in a group. You can be vulnerable. Maybe we're going to have agreement that we're going to reserve judgment, maybe confidentiality, maybe healthy boundaries. We're not going to pigeonhole people. Maybe we're going to have a right to pass. Maybe one of our agreements is we're going to ask questions, because sometimes, again, that can be an assumed agreement that people feel comfortable doing that. Assuming positive intent is a classic example of something can be super helpful, that maybe we're going to share space and time so that we don't all take up the, that could be an agreement that I could use in one of my groups, because sometimes people dominate, but we've never talked about, hey, let's all actually try to stay to 5 minutes in our sharing. Just an example of the kind of agreements that can be really helpful. So just if you think about a conflict or group effort that didn't go well, you can probably come up with some implicit assumption that got in the way because you didn't have agreements. The micro practices really are just to create agreements with your team, both on how to be together. For example, are you going to be on time, positive intent, and then as well as the explicit agreements on what we need to do and how we will do it. Sometimes we focus so much on the second, we forget the first. And then the second part of this is view misunderstandings as opportunities to seek agreements. So sometimes when I get a document from someone that's not at all the way I expected, I think, okay, there's a misunderstanding in communication here. Let's go back together and have an agreement about how this particular thing is going to happen, whether it's an email that's going to be sent out to everyone or whatever it is. Ask for clarification and create agreement on how to move forward. So the tip is to build in an expectation and regular opportunities to seek agreements. And as all of this, it's about modeling it ourselves. So if we regularly seek agreements and talk about our agreements, our team members will learn and appreciate the value of it. The fourth thing is honoring agreements. Agreements is so important. We have as two separate skills to talk about it. Honoring agreements is about following through keeps us true. Now, I know for some of us, we think, okay, that means I have to do everything I've ever said I would do, and I just have to do it that way. And we know that's not realistic. So we realize that honoring our word actually can be done in one of two ways. It can be keeping our word on time. Okay, I said I was going to have this project done by Tuesday. Here it is. The second way of keeping our word is as soon as we know we won't be doing it, we won't have that project in on Tuesday, we inform all parties that are counting us. I know I promised the budget on Tuesday. I'm sorry, I haven't been able to get it done. So I have to clean up any mess that I've caused in their lives. I know that you don't have the budget done, therefore you can't get your report. So let me help you with your report since I haven't given the budget to, right? Just the kind of thing that we can do if we're not able to honor our word. It's all sorts of things like calling people. I'm sorry, I'm going to be late. I know we said we were going to meet at 7:15. I'm not going to get there till 7:25. What can I do to help you? Maybe we're going to cut short our meeting and have it shorter because you have to get to your next meeting. Honoring agreements. So what are the micro practices around this? When someone has not kept an agreement, be curious about where things stand and ask them directly. So, hey, I thought you were going to turn in that project yesterday. Can you give me an update on it? Or let others know how you are impacted when an agreement is not met. Thanks for letting me know it won't be done until Thursday. Since I don't have it, I won't be able to include it in my report to the COO. Please update me sooner next time to avoid unrealistic expectations. We can be kind and direct. And if we check in regularly to build accountability, people will start having an expectation that we as a team honor agreements. That's the tip. Build an expectation that you and your team will honor agreements. And as with all of these skills, make sure you honor it, model it. Just one tip that can help us a lot is just to acknowledge I'm not my most resilient self in this moment. So sometimes when we're in a meeting, things are not going very well, we feel ourselves being triggered, we're going to move maybe into doing some breathing mindfully, but just telling the team I'm not at my most resilient self in the moment, that opens the door for communication. It can build psychological safety, as we talked about earlier. And thinking about what pattern can I honor, which of my protective patterns might be helpful, or my cultural patterns, or resilience skill can I choose right now? And we actually have 16 resilience skills that we talk about in our work. This is just an example of the work. So our patterns, we talk about our cultural patterns that give us cultural resilience. That's how we view the world. Our protective patterns, they give us reactive resilience, and that's how we react to the world. And I talked about them very quickly today. We go with them into a lot more detail in our other materials and programs. And then we have our skills, our centering skills, our connecting skills, neither of which we talked about today, and our collaborating skills that give us group resilience. And I shared 3 of those collaborating skills today. We also have the mindsets of curiosity, choice, and courage. And all of these things work together. They guide us in using the patterns and skills. Together, the We Are Resilient approaches that package, that beautiful present that I showed you at the beginning, and they help transform us to become the people we want to be. They help us manage stress and create those relationships and build the kind of strong teams that we want. We Are Resilient as a whole can help you navigate daily stressors, improve your relationships, and mitigate any vicarious trauma you might feel in your work. It helps you respond with kindness through strength-based relational practices. That's how we build the team and create the work that we want. Those strength-based relational practices are key. And it helps you guide others with resilient skills and awareness for well-being. We have a lot of books on our website. Most of these can be downloaded for free as PDFs, as well as purchased for families, for educators, for healthcare workers. And you can also download free digital resources, join our resilience circles, once a week sessions to really get the material in a deeper way. All sorts of training. We can do custom training for your workplace, or many of our free webinars, and we could also purchase materials. I love to hear from people, so please contact me at Meri McCoy Thompson, Dovetail Learning, for more info. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. And I will be sending this out, both the slides as PDFs, and I will be sending out the recording. So thank you so much for showing up today. I hope that I've given you some insight into how we can improve our teams. It's a lifelong effort, just like the lifelong effort for changing ourselves, but it's worth it. That's how we create the world we need. Thank you so much for joining me today.